Hey guys, welcome to a first edition of Solid State Gamer Proto Watch, small video series that I've concocted where essentially I'm going to start looking at games in their prototype or developmental stages and basically give you guys a walkthrough of what the prototype was about and pretty much how far they came along in their proof of concept and features that are in it that have actually transcended into the final release of that certain title, or features that were left behind, or just little interesting knickknacks or nuances in the mechanics in the graphical presentation and audio presentation that I find fascinating. Welcome. As always, I'm your host, Jon Rivera, lead reviewer for the Solid State Gamer, as well as host of the Solid State Romcast. And basically, the criteria of this video series has to do with games that are clearly in prototype or developmental stages, and not necessarily games that were near to completion and pretty much 10% away from commercial release, albeit with some bugs possibly. So stuff like the final beta for Star Fox 2 will be accepted, but stuff like the early beta that features the multiplayer in Star Fox 2 will not be accepted. It'll be included in Proto Watch. Also stuff like the cartridges, dumps of Resident Evil 1 for the Game Boy Color also qualifies as something of a prototype. Same thing as Fallout Van Buren and Resident Evil 1.5. I know a lot of people like to delineate Resident Evil 1.5 as its own thing because, well, to be honest, it is its own thing, but technically it was originally supposed to be Resident Evil 2. So, therefore, that game counts as a prototype. So, that's pretty much the criteria for Proto Watch. So, without further ado, you've probably already seen the title screen scroll a few times. I am looking at a prototype of Resident Evil 1 for the Sony Playstation. Specifically, I am looking at the 1995 build dated August 4th. So, that's how far along the game was in production. So, let's just get into it. First things first, you're going to notice that the title screen is not as detailed as the final one. It's also not a frozen frame of the FMV sequence showing Chris Redfield's live motion counterpart. It is, in fact, a drawing of an eye. Here you can see that here's one of our first graphical snafus. It shows Redfield's face right here, Chris Redfield. And, of course, you can't play as Jill. This only has one playable character from the outset, Chris Redfield. And this prototype, I'm just going to sum it up in a nutshell right now. It's just a prototype that shows rudimentary combat mechanics and rudimentary movement mechanics. And basically, it's a proof of concept for maneuvering, traversing, and accessing new rooms within the game's environment. So, we're going to get into it right here. You can tell that the music's kind of subdued. It's actually a music track that happens in the middle of the game. But this one music track is pretty much one of the first made for the game. So as a result, it's the only track that plays throughout the entire build. Here's something interesting that I'll show you from the outset. To talk to Jill Valentine, you're not going to press square, you're going to press triangle. Which is kind of odd, because you exit the dialogue, or at least move the dialogue along by pressing square. Now, as you can see right now, the art that composes the pre-rendered CG of the mansion right so far looks kind of rough. I mean, in other words, it looks like it's still in its developmental stages. Here's Chris right here doing his idle animation. And this would be a good way to cycle through idle animations, switching weapons on the fly using the circle button. In this build, you can do that to switch between weapons on the fly. And to preface this, there is no ammo limitations. Ammo's infinite, and you can't even access your inventory. It was so early in development that the inventory was not even conceived of yet. So select and pause actually do nothing. You can't even pause your game, so you just stay in continuous play. So this is Chris Redfield. Let's see if I can get it a little more close up. I might not be able to, not from this camera angle. And just to let you folks know, this is obviously being emulated. This build never saw the light of day, of course. So I'm actually running it on an emulator on my Nintendo Wii, and I'm playing it using a GameCube controller, which has a horrible D-pad, so I'm kind of suffering playing through this. I wish I could go with the analog stick, but that's not possible. And also to let you know, this emulator doesn't use any special filters, and this is not using any special filter or special plugins for the graphics or audio. It is straight up the base BIOS and the base plugins that essentially play the game as if it was being played on original hardware, albeit, you know, with some problems. But from what I've experienced with this build, it runs proper. Obviously you can see that it's got a lot of jagged edges. It's obviously outputting at 320 by 240, and it's obviously interpolated. It's not progressive. So anyway, all those technical details out of the way, let's get into switching through the weapons. Here we have your standard pistol. Fires extremely slowly. The rate of fire is a little faster in the final version. But if you aim downward, for some reason it's a little faster. But when you aim upward, it's the same speed as aiming straight on. And on top of that, just to talk about the aiming, it doesn't make a difference, honestly. You can aim straight forward and hit things that are on the ground. You can also hit things that are jumping up in the air. So, aiming up and down has no tactile importance in this build. So let's switch over to the shotgun. Shells and cartridges that eject from the pistol and the shotgun are nothing more than two-dimensional sprites that animate very well. You can see already they've gotten the collision down. So it's a great little feature that they knocked out right away. Again, aiming up and down. Rate of fire for the shotgun is pretty much the same. Yeah, it's pretty much the same. I'm going to switch off. This is Chris Redfield, unarmed. Now here's a piece of useless content. The knife. Now, unlike the weapons, you don't have to hold down R1 and then press the square button. You can just simply press the square button and your character will start stabbing. The only difference is you can't ready your weapon, and therefore you cannot aim up or down. That's alright, because the knife is pretty much useless in this version of the game. So let me switch back to my shotty. Shotty's your go-to weapon. It takes out zombies in one hit if you're in close proximity to them. Far away, it takes a couple of rounds to put them out of commission for good. And for the pistol, it takes quite a few rounds. I don't remember how many. It's 5 or 6 for both the zombies and the hunters. Now with the hunters take only 2 shotgun shells to put down, which is a godsend. So we're going to access this room. Accessing new rooms requires the pressing of the triangle button. Oh. I always forget that there's a zombie right there, because I keep on thinking about the retail release of this game. So the dining room looks, from the previous view, looks a little similar. From here, this is where the similarities start to end. The clock is no longer there. Let me just take out... Ooh. So close up, you actually make their heads blow up. You'll perform a headshot. And like I said, it doesn't require you aiming up or down, because aiming up and down does not, in this game, does not mechanically offer any sort of tactical advantage. So the combat system in this version of Resident Evil 1, this August 4th build of 1995, is very rudimentary. Combat is rudimentary, movement is rudimentary, and I'll explain that in just a second. But right now I've got to kill this hunter. Something that's disappointing about this build is there's no muzzle flare. There's just a sound effect. So shooting your weapon is not all that satisfying. We got the carcass of the hunter right here. Now, normally hunter alphas are not in this area. Normally zombies aren't in that dining room right there. Usually there's a zombie right here munching on the corpse of Forrest, one of Star's Bravo team. But as we can see right here, Forrest is nowhere to be seen. So we haven't seen hide nor hair of Forrest just yet. Actually, let me come back over here so I can show you how the mechanics of the movement work. Kind of archaic. I can see why they changed it in the final version, but one feature they left out kind of bothers me. So, backpedaling will make you, pressing down will make you backpedal. If you're in a state of panic or you're confronted with a monster, you'll slowly backpedal as if you're afraid, which is a great little mechanic because you want that character to be able to backpedal at full speed, but he won't. Now, instead of holding X and pressing forward, your character will not run doing that. You have to double tap and hold down up on the D-pad in order to engage into a run. Now, with this crummy GameCube D-pad, it's murder on your digit to actually engage into a run and have to actually turn in the environment. Sometimes you break out of the run, but that's not necessarily a fault of the game design by itself. It's coupled with this abhorred D-pad. Now, another interesting feature that was, dropped is the quick turn. You can engage in quarter quick turns or 180-degree quick turns by double tapping the left or right of the D-pad. Now, double tapping left or right and just letting go will be a quarter turn. Double tapping and holding left or right will engage in a 180-degree turn. So it's actually really useful to actually be able to turn around, pop off a shot, turn around, pop off a shot. Let's see if I can perform this tactic. It's a little rough around the edges, but I mean that's to be expected with an alpha prototype like this. But it's still a great feature. I've actually found myself using it in a couple of situations. So this is the room right here where you have to have Rebecca Chambers play the piano, or if you're Jill Valentine, you just know how to play the piano. Nothing really special in here, but the room does look significantly different from the final version. A lot of these pre-rendered backgrounds are just really rough around the edges. Can't enter this room. There are a lot of rooms that just weren't really implemented in this version, so it's... Oh, here we go. I gotta... Respawning enemies, folks. Are you dead? Nope, you're not. You still... Okay. This game is still... even in its developmental stages, it's still kind of frightening. Into a run. Like, running in this game is really goofy. I'm glad that they fixed it. Are you still... Okay, he's dead. There's really nothing special about that dining room. There's no clock. There's nothing that can be investigated in this prototype build. The only messages that really pop up are Jill Valentine saying, it's too dangerous to go up these stairs. Too dangerous to go outside. I assume that's what that's saying. That's the thing. Obviously this is a prototype of not Resident Evil, but Biohazard, as it's known in its native Japan. We're gonna go into this room. This room is a dead end. It doesn't really lead anywhere, but I just want to show these zombies right here. So I'm gonna perform a 180-degree turn and take these zombies out. I can't tell you how useful of a feature that is, and it kind of pains me that it's a feature that's non-existent in the final version. There's really nothing special about that room. I just wanted to show how kind of rough around the edges that the pre-rendered CG backgrounds looked. But I mean, as rough as these backgrounds look, the world of Resident Evil, you can see it. You can see it in its form right here. Now this is extremely rough. There's really no graphical detail. I mean, basically, this statue right here is essentially a polygonal model that's been Gorod shaded and has basically been captured in two-dimensional form. So that model is not even properly textured. It's using a different type of shading that is different from all these other polygonal entities that were pre-rendered and essentially captured in 2D. So, statue is Gorod shaded. Everything else has a texturing about it, though. But the texturing is extremely low res. Oh! So here we have Forrest. So he's in a completely different part of the mansion in this build of the game. Now, I know Chris Redfield's looking rather nonchalant right now, but you imagine having some, like, horrific musical swelling going on as you first discover his corpse. And kind of like the intro cinematic, when you first encounter that first zombie, Forrest's head is half, you can see his face is partially devoured, and just him looking into the camera like that is pretty jarring. Every time I actually get into play this prototype, and I get into this room and I see that camera angle, I mean, it's so artistically placed. Obviously it was placed there for a reason. But the thing is, the best part about it is that you don't want to really go beyond this point. You see the carcass looking at the camera, and you see what has become of Forrest, and you don't really want to push forward. But I'm going to anyway. Oh, here's some clipping. So Forrest is actually a polygonal entity right here. And as you can see right here, you can't really see his legs, which indicates that his legs have also been devoured. So, enough about that. Let's take care of this business. Again, CG pre-rendered backgrounds, rough around the edges. Obviously, the ink ribbon is nowhere to be found here. Saving as a feature was not implemented in this build of the game. And I'm pretty sure in the later prototypes of Resident Evil 1, there were no save features available. The concept of the ink ribbon was not implemented until, I guess, maybe before release. I don't know. It's hard to say. Here's the iconic hallway scene where the dogs crash through the windows. Now, from what I remember, there are no Cerberus dogs in this build of the game. Also, this polygonal entity was not here. Oh! Nice. Uh-oh. Spiders. Now, okay, of course this spider does not exist in this hallway in this version of Resident Evil 1. I'm going to just move this just to show you that it can be done. And I'm probably going to get killed by these spiders. So I'm going to go through this doorway. Like the final version, this actual hallway has no sound attached to it, no music. Now, it's kind of goofy right here. The rotating my character right here actually makes the camera change. But this is a good way to see the 3D engine of Resident Evil or Biohazard in this prototype stage at work. As you can see right now, the 3D engine is extremely rough. You know, even though the final version of Resident Evil 1 was one of those early generation PlayStation games that suffered greatly from Z-ordering issues, and Z-ordering indicates basically what polygonal entity should be displayed in succession relative to another. So when you see a lot of these weird jagged, these weird polygons of the shoulder that are protruding or being shown to protrude from the vest, like you see Chris Redfield's right shoulder, and how the Z ordering is kind of, it's showing that the shoulder is kind of protruding from the vest when it shouldn't be. That's Z ordering, and that's a Z ordering issue, and that's very characteristic of early generation PlayStation games. But from here, it seems to be a lot more egregious. You can actually see his neck protruding from the vest. And that's something that shouldn't be possible. You see part of his neck protruding from his torso, and the elbow joints of Chris Redfield's arms. I mean, they seem to be colored differently. His biceps and triceps, that region of his arm, seems to have a different shading of flesh color than his forearm region. Very fascinating. And of course we get, switch to the weapons and stuff so you can see them close up. So that's the knife. Like I said, incredibly useless. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how pointless this knife is. In fact, I don't really think it damages enemies. Well, I'm sure it does, but it just barely puts a dent in them. Here's the pistol at work right here. You can see the ricocheting of the rounds out of the ejector. It looks quite nice, even though, like I mentioned before, they're nothing more than glorified sprites. Let's see if I can get it ricocheting off both walls. Okay, maybe not. So we'll try to access this door. That camera angle makes no sense. I never understood that. Loading screens, you know, I never mentioned it before, but the loading screens are pretty much preserved. There's a little difference in how the doors are articulated, but for the most part, they, you know, it achieves the similar effect. So here's the toilet. Don't need to go. Whenever I access this room, I know there's nothing in it in the final version, but every time I access that room and I see the shower, I always think about Stephen King's The Shining, and that horrifying scene with the dead old lady. Oh, yeah, I think they put that in there on purpose. Here's that room that has the crushing ceiling. Now, I actually recorded this before, and in times past, I've gotten the shotgun. Let's see, I'm just gonna, and I'm gonna say no. But interestingly enough, to make this decision, you actually have to press X, not triangle or square. It's really inconsistent in how the UI works in this game. But then again, I don't think they had really thought about implementing the UI at this point. They just wanted to get the notion of traversing the environment, the pre-rendered backgrounds and everything like that, the rudimentary combat in place, and some preliminary monster AI and combat going on. So, and here I believe we are nearing the end of the prototype. This prototype is constructed in a way that kind of gives, if I were a suit at Capcom, if I were at the top of Capcom at the corporate end, and I were Shinji Mikami, the director of Resident Evil at the time, this is a demo that would just kind of give an intimation as to what this game could be in its final stages. Okay, can't go through there. The other door you can't go through either. The one that's at the far end of that hall when you turn right. Or maybe, no, okay, maybe you can. I'm thinking of a different room. Sorry. This is the painting, the portrait puzzle room with the crows. Or ravens. I'm not sure what the difference between the two are. I'm not a bird expert. I apologize. This is the entrance to the utility shed. And there is a hunter. Man, those things are still terrifying. They look a little different. In fact, that texture, that skin of the hunter was slightly modified, and it was used as a special enemy in the Sega Saturn version of Resident Evil 1. The Saturn version has a lot of cosmetic and mechanical differences. There's an extra mode in there too. As you can see right here, the puzzle where you have to insert the various crests that have different shapes on them is not present here. And so that's another aspect of the game that is absent. Saving, puzzle solving, inventory management, and managing limited ammunition and healing supplies. It's just not a feature that was even explored in this stage of the game. I'm sure it was conceived and conceptualized in theory. Oh. And that is the end, folks. That concludes this prototype of Resident Evil, which was presented as a build to the folks at Capcom Corporate. on August 4th, 1995. We have that proud Capcom logo, which is not even the same animation for that. And so there you have it, guys and gals. That's the August 4th, 1995 prototype build of Resident Evil, or Biohazard, for the PlayStation. And it's a really fascinating artifact in video game history, and you know, I don't know if I've found every single thing in it. I've put the game through all sorts of permutations to see if there are any differences, any new nuances that I haven't uncovered yet. But you know, for right now, that seems to be it for the prototype, which is understandable. This game was not just a prototype; it was also like a proof of concept of the survival horror blueprint, I guess you would say. The new evolution of it since the days of Dr. Hauser and Alone in the Dark. It's very fascinating. I'll constantly look back to this for references in terms of placing myself in a context, proper context for exploring the notion of survival horror and in the world of video games. So, anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you guys have any suggestions for future installments of Solid State Gamer Quick Looks or Solid State Gamer Proto Watch videos, definitely drop us a line at solidstateromcast@gmail.com. Again, that URL is solidstateromcast@gmail.com, and hope to hear from you guys, some comments, some feedback, some criticisms, some suggestions. We welcome all of that. We're not really necessarily picky, and definitely let us know if you guys like this video and just like my sort of run through of it and how I explain things. Definitely let me know. I always have room for improvement, and I say, you know, it's never good enough. Definitely offer suggestions of what you want to see and maybe how you think I can cover these videos better. I think I do sufficiently well with the material presented to me. This is pretty much impromptu, off the cusp, and I'm not really using any notes of any sort except for notes that I've taken of differences and nuances in the game, and I just kind of use those key points and elaborate on those. But aside from that, I'm kind of just doing a recitation. You know, think about it as a college recitation with a live demonstration of these prototypes in their raw stages. And I look forward to doing more of these in the future. But as for now, I have to say, see you guys next time. Again, thanks for watching. And be sure to visit our website for more video features. Go to thesolidstategamer.wordpress.com. We're not quite cool enough to have our own address yet, but that will change in the future. But as of right now, we have humble beginnings. So I'll repeat that URL again. It's thesolidstategamer.wordpress.com. And be sure to check out our written features as well as our video features that we've done so far. And see you next time on Solid State Gamer Proto Watches. I'm your host, Jon Rivera, saying thanks for watching.